Hello, hello, and welcome once again. J76NY here, and we are up to episode number 7 of our For the People playthrough on Suzerain. Last episode, we had a meeting with Mr. Caranti, the media conglomerate. I think we are on the same page with him, although it makes me a little nervous that he acted like he knew something, possibly about that bribe I took. We made a deal with him, even though he didn't specify what he wanted in return, so we may be going down a dark path there. We had a meeting about our diplomatic situation. I'm leaning towards these guys, Agnolia, trade relations with Agnolia. And we attended the funeral of Bernard Circus, where I gave a very powerful speech, a very unifying message, and impressed everyone in sight, apparently. So now we are on to a new day. Let's read the newspapers, see what everyone has to say. Emergency in Anrica, mayor announces. Troubling news are coming from the mayor of Anrica, who reported that a state of chaos exists in the city and called an emergency directive, authorizing him to use security powers. In an announcement, Mayor Lesty said, "We are reporting 20 police officers heavily wounded, 2 police stations burned down, and several shot. The city is in a state of emergency and we are trying to restore order." The local gendarmerie began assisting the mayor after the emergency request was made. The armed units are now securing critical junctions and key infrastructure. Local NFP leaders have announced that they will assist the local enforcement with the task of keeping the streets safe by reporting violent dissenters. A statement. Okay. Lockhaven Times, welfare issues of Narble. Narble, a city that was once an important trade stop for the Marquian Empire, has been in steep decline for the past decade. We have uncovered the hard truth from the residents themselves. KA-46, a shepherd, KA, who is 46, a shepherd living near the Cavendier Mountains that did not wish to disclose his real name, has made shocking remarks about the city's and region's lack of health care services. He has waited almost 5 months just to get an appointment in the rural region. Another resident, a farmer, who is 57 years old, who did not want to disclose his name, is living near the outskirts of Narble. His children have to use dangerous mountain paths to walk to their schools located 2 kilometers away. And let's skip the radical for now. Swordland condemns closure. The response to the Rumberg consulate closure in Lockhaven was quick. The Minister of Foreign Affairs sent a strongly worded official diplomatic condemnation letter accusing Rumberg of destabilizing Swordland and the surrounding regions. Several nations have made supporting statements for Swordland in the Alliance of Nations. It is clear that this letter is not just directed at Rumberg, but to all surrounding countries observing the serious situation. And now the radical. We need democracy. We have long demanded the expansion of civil rights with reforms to modernize our nation. When the previous government blamed the Supreme Court for not allowing the reforms, the opposition was quick to point out that flaws within the Constitution and brought focus on reforming the government structures to open way for further civil reforms. Now the reformists have increased in number, and with a president who is seen as a symbol of change in office, we are waiting for results. Whether it is the leader of the opposition or our current president, somebody has to break the cycle and rewrite the Constitution made by Tarkin Sol, whose cult of personality has shaped our current divided national spirit and must be broken. Will President Rayne stand up to the establishment and listen to the people? We will see. I plan on it, Radical. I plan on it. Okay, so what do we have to attend to today? Briefing on the results from the Reform Committee. Read the report from Arbory. Young Swords members claimed link to government. A detained young swords member in Arbory claimed that he had connections to the government. We have been investigating the truth of his claims, but we're not able to find any leads. Investigation ongoing. Wonder who they could be connected to in my government. This thing's flashing here. So, let's see. Current situation. Not sure if there's anything that I can do here. Oh, wait. Here we go. Economic Relief Act. Well, market economy. Stimulus checks distributed. Okay. Cool. And this is flashing, so we'll take a look at this. Turn 2. I accepted a bribe from the oligarchs. I visited the towns affected by political violence. Let's see. Backroom mutual assistance deal with Marcel Caranti. Okay. Alright, now we will hear from the Committee on Reforming the Constitution. I came a little early to the meeting room before anyone showed up. We had scheduled a meeting to discuss the progress of the Reform Committee regarding the new Constitution. I took a seat in the center chair at the vacant meeting room as I waited for them to show up. The reforms were slowly becoming the most significant expectation of my government. We would be changing Seoul's Constitution of 29. Most people nowadays blame the Constitution for the outstanding problems of the country. On the other hand, the reformists in the Assembly had been getting louder about their demands. What I knew for sure was that I needed to do something about this encroaching chaos before it swallowed me. Meanwhile, Lucian, Peter, and Naya have been leading the committee to prepare an initial draft for the constitutional amendments. I was intrigued to hear their results. There was a knock at the door. It was Lucian. Good afternoon, sir. I would much rather have the Chief of Staff from the West Wing. Can't remember the guy's real name or the character he played, but he was one hell of a Chief of Staff. Love that show. Anyway, Lucian arrived exactly on the hour mark again. His punctuality could almost be described as obsessive. I'm going to tell a joke. You waiting behind the door for the exact second, Lucian? I'm sorry, sir. Oh. Forget it. How are you today? You seem to be arriving at the exact second of all meeting. He is over his head, so let's just move on. I'm good, Mr. President. Thanks for asking. He took a seat on the table and took out a bunch of documents, spreading them on the long table. And we should begin the meeting as soon as Mrs. Morgana and Mr. Vice President arrive. We finally have some results from the Reform Committee. Oh, how does it look? Well, the situation is quite complicated, but I'm sure we will make it work, just like we accomplished many things before. We'll go over the details regarding the new Constitution in the meeting. A few minutes later, Peter and Nia also arrived. After a short chat, everybody sat down and took out their notes. I knew it was going to be a long meeting. Oh boy. There is a lot to talk about the future of this process. Let us begin to tackle the points of contention. Mr. President, our committee meetings were really fruitful, and we already started working on the constitutional draft together with the reformist. They demand a little too much, but I've had success with Franz Richter to create a realistic draft that could potentially go through the Supreme Court. A little, they demand to rewrite the whole Constitution. The requests were definitely not outrageous, just not realistic in today's circumstances. Just because it wouldn't pass the Assembly, nonetheless, I'm glad that we are reaching common ground already. If we can reach an agreement with the reformist, we will be very strong in the Assembly to propose the change. Okay. Can we reach a 2/3 majority in the Assembly? Is it possible to pass the Supreme Court? See, the Supreme Court's probably going to be the biggest hurdle because they have a strange veto power on legislation, and part of our reforms is limiting the power of the Supreme Court, so I don't know if I don't even know if this is going to get past the Supreme Court, so let's see. They're the biggest obstacle. Even if we pass the Assembly, the Chief Justice will do his best to block our amendments. We need at least 6 of the 11 judges to vote for the proposal. But Mr. Hawker has an enormous influence over the judges. He's the Chief Justice. Orso Hawker. We should reach out to the judges in secret, says Peter Vectern. Some of them might be willing to break ranks and support us. All means are to be considered in order to succeed. They will surely support a just cause for the country and its future, which is completely, totally way too optimistic. Neo was taken aback by the statement. According to the Constitution, I am a member of the Supreme Court, which means we already have 1 vote. 2 of the judges are friends of mine and of similar opinion about the reforms. Consider them with me. 6 of the 11, so there is 3. So we only have 3 votes out of 11. Who else would be willing to support reforms? I'm sure the rest can be bribed. Oh, here we go. Who else would be willing to support it? I think Judge Edmonds can be persuaded, and in extension, Mr. Dalton and Mr. Merton. They were really blinded by the Solist ideology. Yes, those 3 don't seem to be working directly with the Chief Justice. If we can get to Isabel Edmonds, we might get these 6 votes needed. That's our best bet. Can we reach a 2/3 majority in the Assembly? If you can get Franz Richter to work with you on this, our only problem would be uniting our own party. We'll never be able to get NFP to work with us. We need the majority of our 130 seats in the Assembly to vote in favor. With PFJP's full support of 70 votes, we will easily surpass the needed 166. But it will be tough to unite the USP with all the divisive wings that has formed. You must make them follow you loyally. We did it before the election. We can do it again. We will convince the leads. Shit flows downhill. Elbin Clavin and his reformist wing would be supporting you. He already weighed in heavily in the committee meetings. However, the conservatives would be tough to break. The influence of Sol is still living strong in the party. We will eventually remove his influence. How many votes do they have? Do you think they can be persuaded? How many votes do they have? The conservatives have around 40 seats. There are many on-the-line people, and some of your loyalists might decide to show their true faces too. So we need as many of the conservatives to support us, and there is only one person who is key to make them back us. Gloria Torrey. She is well respected by the Solist. She will be our biggest obstacle in the Assembly, and her demands will be extensive. I also have reason to think she might be in Orso's pocket. She will be tough to break, but we'll need her help to get the conservative support. What are the demands? We should run down each of the main demands of the committee and get your input first. Mrs. Morgana can explain them further. We'll start with the first red line. The new Constitution will fix the loopholes regarding the President's absolute veto powers. Even though Mr. Richter put on a whole show about why vetoes should completely be removed, the committee has almost unanimously agreed on fixing the loopholes, thus limiting presidential vetoes. My suggestion is to add a clause detailing the method the Assembly may override a veto with some sort of supermajority. One person should never be able to block the rest. The loopholes give the president too much power. They will not be allowed to dictate the negotiations. And I stand in agreement with Mr. Richter. The veto should be removed. I don't agree with that it should be removed completely. I think the president should be allowed to block legislation that does not align with his particular vision for the country. We can close the loopholes. Whatever you decide, it's important to get a balanced picture. We will be making history by changing the 29 Constitution of Seoul. The second one is about the judiciary. The new Constitution will remove the Supreme Court's right to vote on legislation, which I am 100% in favor of. This is yet another point that was unanimously agreed on by all parties. Tarkin Seoul established this rule to protect his 29 Constitution. We all know most of the judges are still his pawns. Constitutional amendments will still be very difficult to accomplish with a reform like this, particularly because we will keep the two-thirds vote system to be able to propose a change. However, the judiciary will not have the final say in any amendments. This is already what we wanted to do. I can't disagree with that. We need the court to even pass this change. Why would they support this? And what good does that do us? This is already what we wanted to do. I can't disagree with that. Glad to hear it. Okay. Apart from these two critical points, they have other major demands. They want to reform the appointment procedure of the ministers. Mr. Richter clarified that the Assembly should have a say in the formation of the Council of Ministers. Not sure I agree with that one. That is something that a majority of our party also supports. Oh. Okay. Well, Mr. Richter also talked about abolishing the member of honor rights of Tarkin Seoul that give him absolute immunity and make him a permanent member of the Assembly. Well, that's one of the controversial ones. I doubt the USP would like that. Immunity of the justices, the impeachment of the president, limiting the power of presidential decrees. All of this came up during the committee meetings. Give me 1 second to shut my dogs up. All right, that might or might not have worked. Yes, reformists expect big reform, while our faction in the USP are not very keen on pushing changes that are too great. I'd say keeping everything in the middle ground is the safest bet. No need to agitate anyone too much. I disagree. We'll push for comprehensive reform. It is what the country wants, after all, Peter. And I think the influence of Seoul has worn out its welcome, so they have valid concerns we need to look at. We'll push for comprehensive reform. I'm going to go with we'll push for comprehensive reform because that's what we promised. I'm with you, Mr. President. Glad to hear it. Yeah. Well, regardless of what Mr. Rayne decides, Mr. Rayne, we will need to work together to push this agenda. Now, we have a better picture of your intentions, sir. I will start reaching out to my contacts to make a draft that works for us. I'll present your input to the committee. In a few months, you would have a draft on your desk to make the final changes yourself. I think this was yet another fruitful meeting, sir. Your service is appreciated. If we do this, we will be remembered as heroes. Together, we will democratize Swordland. Thanks for the meeting, everyone. I appreciate your service. Thank you for the kind words, sir. You can count on us, Anton. Yes, Mr. President. I think this is where we'll call it, sir. Have a good day. They left the room. Okay. That was fun. Ooh, we get to meet with the Chief Justice, Orso Hawker. That'll be a blast. Anything else? Read the report from Lockhaven. H3 construction plans started by Underhaul, and you can see the progress of the highway right here. Underhaul Construction has reported that preparatory work for the H3 highway has already started, including clearing land and demolishing buildings in the path of the future roadway. Construction of the highway will be starting in the next months, working west from Lockhaven. Okay. Well, let's go see Chief Justice Orso Hawker. The administration had been working day and night on the overwhelming amount of issues that we're facing in the country. The department sent several documents which required my signature so they could start work on the new decisions that were taken. After I signed dozens of them, I closed my eyes to relax for a moment. Another long day. Stop whining, dude. Even though I really wished to leave the palace for the day, Lucian had earlier told me that Chief Justice Hawker, Orso Hawker, wanted to speak to me. We planned to meet in my office in 30 minutes. I waited for him, wondering what subject he would raise. Pour some whiskey. There we go. Ha! Drunk, drunk, drunk. Suddenly I heard a knock on the door. It was Lucian. Good evening, sir. Raise your drink. There you go. I raised the glass of whiskey and gestured at Lucian. He sat on the chair near my desk. I'm good, sir, but good to see you enjoying yourself. Hell yeah, brother. I'm sorry that I couldn't explain the situation to you in detail earlier, sir. The Chief Justice insisted on seeing you this evening. I do not know what he has to say, but it will probably be about the new Constitution. You would better bet on it, buddy. He will be coming shortly with Judge Mr. Garachi to the meeting. We shouldn't take them lightly. Looks like an old crotchety man. Let's see. Studied law. He was in the military. He's married to the sister of General Luteran. Strong supporter of Tarkin Soul. Alright. Let's see. They're here to threaten us to stop the reforms. They're here to test the waters. We may be able to cooperate with them. Regardless of what they say, I will continue with the new Constitution. I think they're here to test the waters. They will probably try to get you to their side. We should. There were 3 knocks at the door. Lucian checked his watch. He looked rather worried. Livia opened the door. Chief Justice Orso Hawker and Judge Hernan Garachi entered the room. Good evening, Mr. President. It's great to see you. Evening. Welcome, Justice Garachi and Chief Justice Orso Hawker. Good to see you guys. Good to see you indeed. Orso gestured at the sofa in the office. May I? Please, sit down. Take a load off. Want some booze? We all took our seats on 2 opposite sofas and made ourselves comfortable. Orso glanced at the glass of whiskey. Celebrating something, Mr. President? Forgive me. Would you like to have a drink? I was just trying to relax. I don't think that's relevant to our meeting. Mind your own business, you old fuck. Can we get to the point, Mr. Hawker? I'm going to offer him a drink. No, thank you. Fine. Me neither. Thank you. Well, you guys can kiss my ass. I'd like to stay as conscious and focused as I can. Okay, Orso. How were your first couple of months, Mr. President? I hope you're faring well. Thank you. It's been busy, but I'm doing good. It was a rough start. I'm doing well. No need to worry. No need for pleasantries. Let's just get to the point. Busy, but good. It will only get busier. Yet, I think you're doing a good job so far. Considering all that's happening around us, with the shootings near the palace, the soldiers on our borders, he let out a deep sigh. It is a troubling time. We appreciate your concern. So, You probably know why we're here. I don't. I could play dumb. Like, I thought you came here to drink, but then you shoot me down? Come on. You're here to bribe me. I might accept. You never know. You're here to stop the new Constitution. Just spill the beans. Play along here. We know you are working on a new Constitution. I haven't really been making a secret of it. The Supreme Court does not approve of this. With all due respect, the Constitution needs to be updated, sir. I am sure you are aware that the public demand and our circumstances. Is that so? I see that you are the one who is not aware of our actual circumstances. You want to make a weaker constitution in the midst of problems from both inside and out. That's absolutely not what I want to do. Even if your proposal passes the assembly, here we go with the threats, I will make sure it will not pass the Supreme Court. That much is clear. Now it's time to be a dick. You haven't even seen the proposal yet, Mr. Hawker. Isn't it too soon to be against it, so you came here to threaten us? Come on, Hawker. We can figure something out. We'll get the court too, even if you don't cooperate. We got people on the inside, bud. May not be a lot of them, but I think that might be a little far to go on this one. He is kind of threatening us. How is that a threat, Mr. President? I merely stated my position. There is no threat there, Mr. President. What are you talking about? Mr. President, you seem to be only partially informed about the current situation. Please let us explain the reasons of our stance. I believe I am fully informed about the situation. I don't care about your reasons. Don't really want to make complete enemies of them. But I don't like them talking to me like I don't know what's going on, so. You think you are, Mr. President, but the Chief Justice has some intel on something that you would be very interested in. And what would that be? Orso signaled Heron with his hand to let him speak instead. Mr. President, I know that you are a busy man, so I will make this quick. We all know that Sorda's security forces found stashes of Rumburgian weaponry in the hideouts of Bludish separatists. KA-74s are roaming inside Swordland at this moment. As much as Rumburg poses a direct threat, now it's clear that they are also intervening in our country and weaponizing our minorities against us. It's not unprecedented to think that the Bloods will start their terror again with their new toys. Not to mention the fights that broke out between the left and right wing after the shooting of Bernard Circus. Communists are rising with the support of the United Cantana. The chaos is imminent for Swordland. And sadly, we don't see the administration taking the necessary precautions. You said you will not focus on military during your term. Under current circumstances, that cannot be tolerated at any cost. Mr. Hawker, the court has no jurisdiction over these matters. We are taking the necessary steps. No need to worry. I did promise that, but circumstances have changed. Tolerated? You should be more careful with your words of choice. So this is the really hard line option here. Court has no jurisdiction over foreign affairs. We are handling it. Aren't we all part of this state, Mr. President? We are all responsible if Swordland fails to overcome these threats. But regardless of that, are you also aware that the armed Bludish separatists have direct connections with the Workers' Party of Bludia? Ooh. Bludish political party in Swordland, which garners most of its support from Bergia region. Does it say how big they are in the assembly? 6% of the vote, resigned from the party and ran as an independent to bypass the 10%. 9% of the vote. Let's see. Everybody knows that. They claim otherwise. The Workers' Party is a democratic party, unlike the militias. They are not the same. I mean, they're all Bloods. Right? People will play dumb. They say they aren't. They may claim they have no ties with the Separatists, but most of their members used to be part of them before they formed the Workers' Party of Bludia. How about the name, Mr. President? It is not the Workers' Party of Swordland, is it? As far as I am aware, there is no nation called Bludia around here. What is all this about? The only reason they are not in the assembly is because of the electoral threshold. They have gotten quite big. They are clearly getting outside help, and their connection to the paramilitary Blutish force cannot be denied. And all of a sudden, the reformists are trying to decrease the electoral threshold so that the Blutish separatists can be legitimized in the assembly to achieve their aims of independence. They are citizens of Swordland, whether you like it or not. That's a little dramatic, dude. Say what you will, Mr. President, I am stating the obvious. But I wish the only issues were the Blutish terrorists in Rumburg. The reformist suggested changes would also bring the communists, who are backed by United Cantana, into the assembly. Do you see the pattern yet? These guys are condescending as hell. Oh, I apologize, gentlemen, but I'm not a conspiracy theorist. Take your tinfoil hat off. You saying the reformists are working with foreign powers? There's no evidence about any of this. And what is your suggestion? What do you want us to do? We should take the necessary measures against communist and Blutish plots, as well as increasing our military budget against possible conflicts with Rumburg. Well, I'm not going to argue with you on that one. And of course, not fall into the traps of the reformists by listening to their demands. They are clearly plotting to weaken the president and our whole administration. What's this, our whole administration talk? It's my administration, guys. You're the Supreme Court. And I don't care what else you say, you should not have a vote on legislation. Which brings us to some very important information that we have. It's definitely something you need to hear, and it can change absolutely everything. With all due respect, Mr. President, I think this is getting slightly ridiculous. Please explain, Mr. Hawker. Let the Chief Justice talk, Lucian. You're right, and I don't think anything will come of this meeting. Let's see what he has to say. Of course, sir. The person in question is Mr. Franz Richter himself, the leader of the reformists. We have enough information to infer that he has ties with Arcasia. Oh. Arcasia is aggressively growing their influence around the world, and now we have Mr. Richter coming up with these ridiculous demands for a new constitution amid a chaotic period in Swordland. Well, you never know. I mean, chaos begets change, change begets improvements. All the pieces seem to fit perfectly. That is why the Supreme Court will be doing what it takes to stop these reforms and preserve the Constitution. Which is not what the people want, so you can kiss it. How would you know that Mr. Richter has ties to Arcasia? Mr. Galad, we all know that he has been in Arcasia many times, because it has been documented. But what would you think if he had been making hidden flights into the country? I need to know this. Please explain. He was hiding his flights to Arcasia? And another conspiracy theory. He was hiding his flights to Arcasia? He was. He has been spotted in a hotel in Arcasia last year, where they held the Conference on Economic Development in Volatile Regions. Right around that time, he started to influence the masses into believing that our Constitution is the reason for everything bad. His trip was not documented, nor was he an elected official guest of the conference. We believe that he had a meeting with President Walker behind closed doors. I also have a couple more photos of him that were taken in Arcasia in different cities. Why are you spying on him? One is from a couple of months back. Again, none of it is documented, except for the pictures. He also attended another event in Lesbia last week. The Arcasian Minister of Foreign Affairs was there too. How did you find out about this? If true, this is big. How can any of these be undocumented? That's a good question. If you have pictures of them. Hang on. Okay, we don't know. Even if he used a private plane, we would be able to get the information of his flights. This means he has people helping from the inside. Many Solists were already following his lead for quite some time, Mr. President. I cannot give away their identities, but I can give you the evidence. He handed me a small file. It contained official documents from the Swedish border guards with highlighted dates that showed no trace of Franz Richter's name. There were clear photos of him that were taken at the conference in Arcasia, as well as remarks by lesbian and Arcasian citizens who claimed to have seen him with Arcasian businessmen around the same date. There was also an official transcript of one of his speeches where he claimed to be in Benfi on the dates of the conference in Arcasia where he was spotted. Lucian skimmed through the documents with skepticism, which slowly turned into surprise. These seem to be real. Of course they're real, Mr. Galad. These seem to suggest that Arcasia is behind the reformists. Their demands will only benefit Arcasia. They want us to have a weaker administration while we face all these threats. This is clearly a plot against Swordland. I bet Rumberg is part of their plan too. This cannot be a coincidence that they are weaponizing our minorities against us around the same time. Now you understand the reason of our current stance, and also our suspicions about your advisors, who clearly have not given you this vital information. Lucian gave him a sharp look. We appreciate the information, Mr. Hawker, but I advise against jumping to conclusions right away. We still need to check the information. There is not much time to think or check. It is clearly an emergency. In such cases, the Constitution gives the President the right to use his emergency powers. If we work together, you can be sure that the Supreme Court will not block your declaration of emergency. I'm not buying all this. I mean, even if he did go and have meetings on an unofficial basis, I mean, he does have a good point about outside influence, but I think they are kind of stretching to protect their own position of power. We're going to go with this one. Seems you are influenced by Mr. Galad way more than you think. Fuck off, dude. What is that supposed to mean, Mr. Hawker? Why don't you explain your agenda yourself, Lucian? Oh, they're going to fight. You are swaying the President to ignore the national security threats. I am not swayed by anyone, Mr. Hawker. This is my own decision. You are the one trying to sway me into believing conspiracies. Gentlemen, let's get back on topic. Nope, this is my call to make, my decision. Stop picking on my chief of staff. Say what you will, history will prove us right once again. Hasn't proved you right so far, brother. And if you believe you can enact these reforms, you are living in a land of dreams. Regardless of our situation, I'll be proceeding with the reforms. Sorry to upset you, gentlemen. I think this meeting is over. Yep, goodbye. Even though you are aware of our national security threats, you are making a big mistake, Mr. President. We will not allow you to succeed. I'm going to get pissed here. Enough! There was a long silence in the room. I said the meeting was over, so pack your shit. Seems the President is done with us, Huron. Let's take our leave. They stood up. Well, thank you for having us, Mr. President. Have a good evening. They both left the room without saying anything else. Lucian Galad. That was not good. They clearly tried to threaten you. We need to take care of them. I wonder what that means. We have to make sure our reforms will pass the court. How dare they talk to... I'm not scared of them. There we go. Orso will be doing whatever it takes to damage you. We need to be careful. There are still many Old Guard sympathizers in our party. We cannot let them divide our party. And he will definitely try. After a short evaluation of the situation on our hands, Lucian left me in the presidential office. It was obvious that the Old Guards would be my main rival in the near future. Well, I think I'm going to call this episode to a close right here. It was a kind of roundabout productive meeting with the Supreme Court, at least with the Chief Justice, Orso Hawker, and his lackey. I wasn't expecting it to go good. We are proposing drastic changes that would limit their power. They are of the old guard that is used to their power. So I didn't really have high hopes for that meeting to go good. It could have gone a little better. Maybe I shouldn't have screamed at him, but it's water under the bridge now. So anyway, if you like the episode, hit that like button. If you have any thoughts, tips, or advice, or would like to offer input into the directions Swordland should take, leave them in the comment section, or you could come over to Twitch. I try and stream between 2 and 5 on Sundays. That's Eastern Standard Time, whatever it translates to in your neck of the woods. Or you could hit the subscribe button and come along here on YouTube. Watch secondhand, but I am open to suggestions in the comments, so do that. Also, hit that like button. Like I said once before, it'll help my channel out a little bit. It'll help the series out a little bit. And we will see you when we return to Swordland, which is turning increasingly into a soap opera. J76NY saying thank you very much for watching and have yourself a very good day.